Alright, Brush Monkeys, we're back with the next edition of the Realm of Chaos Wrath and Rapture boxed set. We're doing the Seekers of Slaanesh this time around. And last time I had, decided that, originally I had thought that I was going to go back and forth doing the Slaanesh and then Khorne and then Slaanesh and then Khorne sides of the things and do them all that way. And I think last time I decided that because they use a similar color palette, it would be more time effective for me to do all the Slaanesh side first and then come back and do the Khorne ones. So that's what I'm going to do, and that means the Seekers of Slaanesh here are next in line. And I decided that because of the size of them, I was going to airbrush the base coats on the figures first. I think what I'm going to do is, if I can take one of these as an example, I'm going to do these flat patches of skin here in Slaanesh Gray and do these scales along the back in Demonette Hide, and then the horns and the hair and claws and everything will be done the same as the Demonettes in the Nightmare Black, and the Demonettes that are riding them, I'm going to do those similar to the individual Demonettes I did, where they're just going to be a riot of colors. All the Seekers, the beasts themselves, will all be that same kind of dulled down purple grayish color, and the Demonettes themselves are going to be this riot of color on top of them, and I think it's going to look really, really cool when I get them done. If you can see on there, the way that's kind of bowed out right there is precisely why I got the larger handle that I did a review of a little while ago. And these are all kind of like that. They all bow out like that. This base size right here is the absolute limit of what the regular Citadel painting handle can handle. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and paint these, airbrush these with their base coats, and then hand brush the Demonettes. You may notice that the banner on the banner bearer here is already done, and that's because I was doing this fade where it goes from dark purple down to really, really light pink, almost white on the very tip there, and I'm probably going to dry brush a little bit of white in there just to get it to completely fade out. But I was doing this at the same time I was doing the Demonette banner here, and you can see how it's got that same kind of, this one started out black and then faded to dark purple. So this one basically starts where that one lets off, right there, right? I was airbrushing both of them at the same time. And I was also doing the dress, the gown on the Infernal and Rapture. As you can see, she's got that same fade going from a very dark purple to a very light, almost pink on the ends of her stuff. It was easier to do them all while I had the colors in the cup, because I was basically started out with purple airbrush paint, and I was using Vallejo Game Air Hexed Lichen for the airbrush paint, and I started out very dark up here at the top, and then I just kept adding white to it as I went further down. So this, all the way down here, if you can see it, that very light pink is just this with a lot of white added to it. And that's a great way to get a nice even color fade, because you know it's all the same color, you're just lightening it up as you go along. The trick now is going to be painting this girl around that banner, because the banner is glued onto her hand there. And hopefully I can get around that by using, I'm going to use my Sotar 2020 to get into those little tight spaces, and then the rest of it will be done with the Badger Patriot Arrow. I also got this new airbrush jar, which if you ever get it, if you work with an airbrush, get one of these. I got this at Harbor Freight, and it's fantastic because you basically just take the tip of your airbrush when you've got a little bit of paint left in the cup, you just stick it right in there and just blow off what's left in there. And the difference is, I bought this to replace a more expensive one that had like a little hook thing that came out on the side here, and sat on the table, and then there was another little metal piece that came up and held the airbrush, so you could just set the airbrush in there and use it as an airbrush stand. This one is actually better because while it's lacking the airbrush stand portion of it, let me open it up here so you can see it. This part where the excess paint gets blown in, on the other one I'd gotten at Hobby Lobby, and it was it's an Iwata paint stand, and like I said, it's got the stand so you can set the brush on it, but between where you put the nozzle of your airbrush and where the air is blown into the jar was a lot shorter on the Iwata. It's just a little thin piece right here, and that resulted in a lot of paint ending up back on the nozzle of the airbrush, whereas this one's got this nice long tube and then the plate that blows it back into the airbrush. And it's got a little bit of flash around the bottom there. I may go ahead and carve that off before I start airbrushing, just to make sure that the directionality of the air hits that and goes into the jar rather than any of it coming back on my airbrush. If you get a chance, pick one of these things up. At Harbor Freight, it's like $8. It's a nice heavy glass jar. I'm just going to leave it there in my painting box, so as I get done painting these girls, I can spray it off into there instead of ending up with this crusty mess I've got going on in here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and airbrush these girls, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, we are back briefly, and as you can see, I've got the Slaanesh Gray and the Demonette Hide airbrushed onto these girls, and they're looking pretty good. I got just a little bit of overspray on this banner, which I'm not real happy about, but it does kind of fit in with the aesthetic. So, like I said, the Seeker's bodies are pretty much all painted now. I mean, the base coats. I've got the claws to do. I've got the little horns and spines and hair, tongues, eyes, all that kind of business. The underbelly on these things, much the same way that the Demonettes were a riot of color back in the day, and these ladies also will be very colorful. The Seekers themselves were really, really bright back in the day. And I think what I'm going to do with these is kind of pay homage to that a little bit by sorry, I think I'm looking at missed a spot here. Missed a spot there. But I think the spots that I've missed, I could probably just overcoat with purple. I think the purple is going to blend all that in. But anyway, much the same way that the Demonettes were a riot of color back in the day, the Seekers were really, really colorful back in the old Realm of Chaos books. So I think what I'm probably going to do is do that with these underbellies. While the skin and the scales along the back of them are that kind of dark purple, grayish color of the new way of painting Slaanesh, I'm going to do the underbellies in homage to the old way of painting Slaanesh figures, to kind of bridge that gap between the old and the new aesthetic, and I think that's going to come out looking really, really good when I get it done. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here and get the base coats done on the rest of these girls, and get the airbrush booth out of the way and put my regular painting station back over here, and then we'll move on to shading and highlighting and all that fun stuff. So be back in a bit. Alright, as you can see, we've got our Seekers of Slaanesh all base coated, and they look pretty spiffy. I'm really liking how they're turning out here. I've got that the purple color scheme that's reference to the modern way of painting Slaanesh miniatures, and then I've got that bright green on the underside of them, and of course the bright skin tones and bright pink tongues that are all much more reminiscent of the old way of painting Slaanesh miniatures. And I think these are going to look really nice alongside the Demonettes. Now with a couple of these, like this one, the I don't know if you can see that real well, and the hair is the same blue-black as the rest of it. I used Nightmare Black with that, but because she's got these two little horns here, I had to paint the horns I used Citadel's Incubi Darkness, which I'm kind of running out of and hoping I can find a replacement in one of the other paint ranges. But I went and painted all the horns, because I had to paint her horns that way. I painted all the horns, so all the Seekers have horns in Incubi Darkness. And something else I did that I'm kind of happy with on these is, let's see if I can find one you can really see it on. Well, you can kind of see it on that one. If you look at the eyes of the Seekers, I painted the eyes really kind of a dark, or the same bright green as I used on the bellies, but I painted black around underneath them, and I painted little lines. That's actually a reference to Alice Cooper's early stage makeup. So I Alice Coopered all my Seekers, and they've all got both eyes done that way. I don't know if we can see that or not. Oh, that one shows up really well. So yeah, that's how I'm doing those. So the next step is going to be shade washing them, and I've got all the shade washes picked out. And then once that dries, I'll show you what those look like, and then I'll do the highlights. So they're humming right along. Okay. Be back later. See ya. Alright, we're back, and we have the Demonettes on the Seekers of Slaanesh all nice and shade washed, and they're looking good. So we're going to go ahead and start highlighting some of these. And I'm going to use a couple of different techniques. Like I think on the legs of the Seekers here, I'm going to use a layering technique because those are nice and smooth. But across the scales and on the back, I'm going to dry brush them. And I think on the Demonettes themselves are probably going to be slightly dry brushed. I've got a new small dry brush that I just got yesterday. So I think that's going to be a big help in getting some of these girls done. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and start the basing on them. So these girls are almost done. See you soon. Alright, they're all dry brushed and looking good. I actually decided to go ahead and go with the dry brush on the legs, because I think that gives a nice bit of definition there, and kind of a scaly texture, and I think they look pretty good. So I've got a couple little details, the gold on them left to finish up. So I'm going to go through and paint the gold on all of them, and then we'll start painting the glue on the base. And for the bases, because they're a little bigger bases, I'm going to go with a, bear with me here, I've got the, it's in the way, the Agrellan Earth, but I've also got this Agrellan Badlands stuff, which is the same kind of thing. It crackles, but it's a little bit of a thicker crackle paint. It's like crackle and texture mixed in together, and so I'm going to use that on parts of it, just to give it a little more interesting look when it's done. And then we'll glue the tufts on, and these girls will be done. So let me go ahead and clean up the golds, and then we'll get on with the basing. Alright, thanks. Alright, so the highlights are done. The gold is all painted on there, and they're looking all spiffy and shiny. I just got done painting the glue on the base, which I don't know if I've covered this in a previous video or not. I feel like I probably did on the basing video. But if you're using a crackled medium like a Agrellan Earth or Agrellan Badlands, or the Mordant Earth kind of thing to do lava bases, you want to paint the base whatever the undercoat, the undercolor you want to show through the cracks, and then you paint just Elmer's school glue, white glue, onto the base, and just kind of slop it on there. It doesn't have to be real neat. You let that dry, and then when you paint the crackle medium on there, it'll crack nice and deep, give really good cracks and show a lot of what's underneath it. I'm using kind of a brown crackle paint on top of a brown base, so it's basically just two different shades of brown. So it doesn't make a huge difference if these aren't really deep cracks, but like for the lava bases where you've got a yellow and orange undercoat and you want the black to crack really well, this is a test base I did, and you can see how it's got nice big cracks all through there. This is all from the white glue underneath it. By itself it won't crack like that, but with the white glue it will. So I want to make sure I covered that and made sure that you knew about that part. And that's really about it. We'll just wait for that white glue to dry, and then we'll put the crackle medium on there and go from there. So these girls are almost done. Once we get the crackle medium on there, I've got the, let's see, I've got the crackle medium, and I've got some green texture paint I'm going to put on in little patches, just to give you a reminder. This is the effect I'm going for, where it's a nice cracked base in there and some green spots. There'll be some flowers. It looks kind of crowded on this base, but on these much bigger bases I think it's going to look really good. So we'll go ahead and let that glue dry, and when I come back we'll I'll get the crackle paint on there and we'll be making progress. Okay, so it looks like the glue has dried on these bases. You can't really see anything on there, but trust me, that's going to make a big difference when we go to do the crackle medium. Now the crackle mediums I'm using today, as I said, are the Agrellan Earth and Agrellan Badlands, and these are actually two different things. The Agrellan Earth is your typical crackle paint. It's just paint with crackle medium built in. It's kind of runny. You just paint it on. The Agrellan Badland is a crackle texture, and I don't know if you can see in that, it's quite a bit thicker. It's going to crackle a little rockier. So we need two different brushes to put these on with. For the Agrellan Earth, I'm going to use this base coat brush. It's fairly big. And then for the Agrellan Badlands, I'm going to use a texture tool. I'm going to do the Badlands first and just scrape out some of that, just like that. And I'm going to do the Badlands mostly around where the characters are standing. So you just kind of glom it on there, and with both of these you want to put them on fairly thick, because the thicker you put them on, the bigger they'll crack. So kind of smear it on there. Try to avoid getting on any on the character's feet, although try to get it around their feet, because that's what causes them to look like they're in the world instead of just kind of standing around on top of it, which looks kind of weird. So I'm gonna rough that up, put that on, scrape a little bit more out here. Just put some up at the front. Don't think I need that much. And as you can see, it's kind of like the texture paint itself, in that it's kind of a gritty, there's kind of a sandy stuff to it. Close that up and then get the brush out. Neat. You can shake up Agrellan Earth and Martian Iron Earth and whatnot, and you get kind of a goop like paint there. So just kind of glop a bunch of that on the brush and slop it onto the base. And again, this stuff, the cracks will depend on how thick you put it on there, so you want them on pretty thick. And we'll just kind of put this stuff all around the Agrellan Badlands. And hopefully what we'll end up with is a lot of big kind of rocky cracks and a lot of thin kind of cracked earth kind of cracks in between. And like I said, the thicker you slop it on there, the bigger the cracks are going to be. So hopefully this will be pretty spectacular when it's done. And there we go. That's really, you can see the two kinds of different textures on there. You can see how this is going to crack. That's really all there is to it. It took like 4 minutes to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all these bases, and then when that dries and cracks, we'll put the we'll take a little bit of the lustrine undergrowth here and put some green spots on it, just to probably we're going to put the green spots over where the Agrellan Badlands is, although not completely cover it, and that'll give a little bit of green spots on there, just maybe a little bit of green up here and just little patch of green back here, just to create a little bit of interest and give a little space for the spaces where the tufts would grow. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and do that to all of them, and then we'll come back when they're cracked and glue the tufts on. All right, so the crackle paint has dried, and as you can see, the Agrellan Badlands paint looks really nice and rocky. The Agrellan Earth is a little smoother. This one cracked up pretty good. Some of the others are, as you can see, it's still kind of smooth with just a little bit of cracks to it. And then really rocky stuff with the Agrellan Badlands. And I've already put the green texture paint on there. So now we just need to shade wash it. And once the shade wash dries, we'll dry brush it and paint the base bands, and we're almost done. Alright, so we've got the bases shade washed. You can see they're pretty nice and dark. They're all dry now. So we're going to dry brush these with two colors here. We're going to use Tyrant Skull for all the ground parts, the brown parts. I'll get in a very light dry brush of this, just enough to bring up the raised edges. The green parts here are getting a dry brush of Niblet Green. And these are among the few Citadel paints that I really like. The dry paints. Their dry paints and their washes are really the really good ones. So we're going to start out with getting a good amount of Tyrant Skull in there. And I'm just kind of wiping it off on paper towel until it's almost all gone. And you should see it just barely colors the brushes. And I've gone over dry brushing in a previous video, so just trying not to get my head in the shot again. So I'm trying to get some light up here where I can see it. There we go. You can see that just brings out those raised edges of the cracks, really makes the cracks stand out a little more. That's pretty. I'm going to go ahead and do this to all of them, and then I'll come back and we'll move them all to corks, paint the base bands, and then we can, once I move them to corks and paint the base bands, then I can matte seal them, and once they're matte sealed, we'll glue the tufts on. So that's what we got left. Be back. Alright, so we're back. We've got the texture paints all dry brushed. They look really good. Let me see if I can get a camera up on that. See, look at that. Looks all spiffy. Yeah. Got them corked, got the base bands painted. So the next step is just to take them over to the spray booth and hit them with the Army Painter Anti-Shine matte sealant. protect all that work we did on them. And then they'll be ready for some tufts and rocks. And I got these are the rocks from the Games Workshop Citadel basing kit. And there's some pretty good sized little slate rocks in there. And then the Army Painter Meadow Flowers tufts. We've got yellow and white flowers in there. We'll probably do a mix of them on there and make them look all pretty. It's going to be awesome. So let me move them over to the booth and we'll get started on that. Alright, so we're back. The Seekers of Slaanesh here are all matte sealed and everything, and they are good to go for the rocks and battlefield tufts. So I'm going to start by taking this glove off because it's getting in the way. I'm going to start by dumping out a few of these rocks. There we go. That should be enough for a little while. Take the tufts out. I don't know if I've covered how to apply the tufts and rocks and stuff like that on a past video or not. But basically all I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of super glue. This is Zap-A-Gap Medium CA+. It's just cyanoacrylic glue. And I'm going to put a little dot of glue where I want each of the tufts to be, and also where I want each of the rocks to be. Just put a rock there, rock over here, maybe a rock right there. Okay. And then I'm just going to take the rocks and drop them on there. Try to find a flat spot on the rock and drop it with the flat side down, because that's usually how rocks appear in nature. Now, despite super glue being like one of those, oh my god, hold it for 30 seconds and it dries instantly kind of thing, it really doesn't. It really takes a few minutes to dry up. So we're just going to leave that there, pull a tuft off, and stick it on the glue. Oops. Still kind of wobbly on the cork. Okay. And we'll pull another tuft off. These tufts are just little clumps of flowers. Okay, I got a really loud cricket in the room somewhere. Crickets in your house are supposed to be good luck, according to the Japanese, so I'm going to leave him where he's at, but he's got to shut the hell up. Cricket. Sorry, I don't even know if that picked up on the mic or not. But he just got really loud all of a sudden. He just... Cricket's got stuff to say. So yeah, we'll just continue with this. Grabbing off tufts, sticking them on wherever you happen to want them. I'm trying to stick the tufts to the green parts of the basing, because you know, obviously where the green is where stuff's going to grow. It's not going to grow out on the arid, dry, cracked dirt. So I'm going to continue on with that, and then we should have the finished Seekers of Slaanesh, and we'll show those finished models. So be right back. And there they are, the finished Seekers of Slaanesh, and they look pretty good. The basing came out better than I thought it would. The flowers, you can see the flowers on the little bases there, and the rocks and everything. It looks like a nice mix of arid and green turf. And I like how the banner came out on that one. So yeah, they look pretty good. I'm going to call them done. And up next, we're going to do the Fiends of Slaanesh, which are going to be the... So stay tuned for that. That is going to be fun. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye. Hey Brush Monkeys, Tom from Flying Monkey Studios here. If you like what you see, click like. If you want to find out when new videos get posted, click subscribe. Comment below on what you want to see on future videos. Visit our Patreon site for lots of ways that you can support me in doing what I do. You can also visit our Instagram and Facebook pages to see all the miniatures that I paint on this channel, and see how you can get your hands on one of your own. So thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for watching my videos, and I will see you guys later. Bye.